Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 1st December 2025. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers which are relevant for your examination. In the initial two topics, we have included two mains practice questions which will be useful for your upcoming mains examination. So in our first topic, we'll try to understand the grade that is given by IMF for India's national account statistics. We'll also try to understand its implications and what can be the way forward to strengthen India's statistical system and to improve the global confidence. After that, in our second topic, we'll look into the persistent challenge of high burden of TB and AIDS in India. And we'll also try to understand what is the Tamil Nadu's public health interventions which has led to greater impact on controlling TB and HIV. After that, in our simplified section, we'll take up 5 articles and we'll try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers which is going to be crucial for your upcoming prelims and mains examinations. So have a look on them also and stay tuned. So let's start our discussion with the first topic, and the context of that topic is that in its 2025 staff report, the IMF retained a C grade for India's national accounts because they noted that there were various shortcomings and issues with regard to the GDP calculation, the methodology that we are using. And they said that this hampers effective surveillance on Indian economy. Why it is important? Let's try to understand. So what exactly happens? This IMF, which was created after World War II, initially its role was limited to stabilization of currency, promoting international trade, etc. But with time, its role also evolved, and now it is one of the important crisis manager, global lender, as well as it also acts as economic advisor to the global economies. And why is it important? The thing is that, let's suppose the Sri Lankan economy, which was facing severe liquidity crisis, they were on the verge of default after COVID-19. Why? Because the Sri Lankan economy was highly dependent on tourism itself, and after COVID-19, tourism took a hit because of the quarantine measures, lockdown, etc. which were there. And the Sri Lankan economy, the government also did various other blunders. For example, they shifted to organic farming, and that too the shift was not gradual, and which impacted the production of agricultural commodities and which also increased inflation in the economy. So because the Sri Lankan economy was on the verge of collapse, they asked IMF for liquidity, that they wanted some funds under the rapid credit facility. So there are various programs which are there by IMF under which it lends to various global economies. There is extended fund facility, there is rapid credit facility, rapid financing instrument is there. So under these programs, short term and long term funds are given to the different economies. But whenever IMF is giving loans or funds to different economies, it is tied to several conditions that until and unless these conditions will be met, these reforms will be taken by the economies, the funds will not be given. For example, in 1991 itself, India went with various reforms like LPG, etc. That is in the same fashion, whatever the funds that are being given to Pakistan, that is again linked to various reforms that they need to take. Whatever the funds that were given to Sri Lanka, that was again linked to various reforms. But how exactly IMF will be getting an idea whether those reforms which were earlier agreed upon, whether that economy is going for that reform or not? It is because of different macroeconomic indicators that they will be watching, based on which they will get an idea whether those reforms are being taken by the economy or not. For example, if the IMF is saying that you change your methodology of the GDP calculation, and whatever the global norms are there, try to follow that. So whatever the GDP data that is coming, if they will not keep a watch on that, they will not get an idea whether reforms are being taken by the economy or not. And in future, if the country will again ask for fund, the IMF can deny because those reforms were not taken. And the board that decides for various decisions which are taken by the IMF, whether loans should be extended or not, they cannot go into all the data with regard to the economy. And that is the reason this IMF staff report, which is there under the Article 4 consultation annual review of member economies, that is part of IMF Article 4 consultations, this grading actually gives an idea, as well as it reduces the time for the decision making for the boards of the IMF. That is the reason IMF's staff keep a watch on all the economies, and they also want to ensure that they are having a surveillance on the major economies, so that in future if there is a crisis that may come, this can be anticipated in a time bound manner and that can be averted. And that is the reason they want most global economies to shift to a standard norm which is being followed by most of the countries, which is being followed by the developed countries. Now, what exactly is the case with India? First of all, these IMF team visits country, they assesses the data quality that is there. Because let's suppose the data that is coming, that is distorted, that is not giving a true picture of the economy. That means that the IMF is getting an idea with the help of that data that everything is happening good in the economy. But in true sense, economy is not doing good. So that is the reason they also looks up to what is the methodology with the help of which that data is coming. Also, based on that, they prepares a surveillance report, and on the basis of that report, on the basis of this grade that is given to the national accounts of the country, further decisions will be taken by the board of the IMF. Also, these grades which are given, for example, they are categorized in A, B, C, D, whatever the grades generally we were also getting in our schools. A is adequate, that whatever the norms are there, whatever the methodology that is being used, whatever the data with regard to the national accounts are coming, that is sufficient, that is completely fine. Then B is broadly adequate, but there are some minor issues which needs to be fixed. Then C is, there are some shortcomings, but because of which the surveillance somewhat is getting hampered, that there are shortcomings and they are to that extent that it is impacting the surveillance. Then there are D, which shows that there are serious shortcomings with regard to the national accounts and the data and the methodology that is being used. Now, with regard to the India's data of 2025, first of all, the overall B grading is there, but with regard to the GDP data, we got a C grade. And why exactly that is happening? Because there are various issues that we will be discussing in detail, that why exactly this C grade we got for the GDP data. But before that, we need to understand, for example, for July to September quarter, what is the latest data? That is we are having 8.2% of GDP. Also, what we need to understand, that this has beaten the expectations of the market, that people were expecting that it will be between 7 to 8%. But we are getting 8.2% of GDP growth, which is historically very high. And that is the reason it creates various apprehensions for various economic commentators, that whether this data is properly coming or not. For example, for earlier July to September quarter, this GDP growth rate was around 5.4% earlier, and then it was revised to 5.6%. Again, that raises eyebrow, that whether the data is properly, we can rely on that data or not. If we talk about the other categories or the other aspects and components that we can say that were taken into account to give the this grade to the Indian national accounts, with regard to the prices, that is indices that are coming with, which is giving an idea about the inflation in the economy. Then the fiscal category, for example, the deficits which are there, how exactly the government is maintaining their accounts, whether it is current account, capital account, whether the deficits, the picture of the deficit is coming properly in the open domain or not. Then with regard to the external category, the balance of payment status, what is current account balance, what is the status of forex reserve. Then, for example, for monetary category, what is the monetary policy mechanisms that is being used by the central bank. And for all these categories, we generally retained the B grade, but majorly it was the GDP data for which we got the C grade. Now, IMF observation was that India needs better quality, availability as well as timeliness of macro data. Now let's try to understand what are the specific concerns which are highlighted by the IMF. First of all, what exactly is the GDP? It is total monetary value of all the goods and services that are produced in the domestic territory during a financial year. So there are three methods based on which this GDP is calculated. One is output approach, second is income approach, and third is the expenditure approach. NSO, which actually calculates the GDP, and it is under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. They calculate this GDP on this value added method or output approach, and they also does this with the help of expenditure method. They do not calculate with the help of income approach because of various data constraints. Now this output approach or value added method, that focuses on whatever the value of all the goods and services that are produced in a country during a specific period. Now whatever the value which is added by all the economic activities for all the sectors at each stage of production, when we will add all that, then we'll get the GDP by value added method or output approach. Then we have the income approach, which gives us an idea about the total income which is earned by all the factors of production within a country during a specific period. For example, there are 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and then we have the entrepreneurship. For land we are getting rent, for labor we are getting wages, for capital we are giving interest, and for entrepreneurs they are getting profit itself. If we will add all these earnings which are being done by the 4 factors of production, we can get this GDP by income approach. And the third approach is the expenditure approach, that whatever the spending which is being done on all final goods and services which are produced in the economy. There are 4 components. One is the household consumption expenditure, whatever me and you are spending for buying toothpaste or various other products which we are using, whatever the expenditure that me and you households are expending. Then there is private investment, whatever the investment that is being done by the businesses, corporations, etc. Then government spending is there, under which whatever the spending that they are doing on the daily businesses, for example salaries, etc., or whatever the investment that they are doing for some of the tangible assets. Then the net of exports, that is export minus import. When we will add all these 4 components, we can get this GDP by the expenditure approach. Now, one of the major specific concern which is highlighted by the IMF is that whatever the data that government is giving, ministry is giving, there is huge discrepancy with regard to the value added data and with regard to the expenditure data. That ideally both these data should give a correct should give a similar picture. The data, there should not be divergence between 2 data, but there is a huge discrepancy with regard to the data that is coming from output approach and expenditure approach. Also, if you see that what is the methodology that is as of now being used for the GDP calculation. If you see pre-2015, the base year was 2004-5. For example, there are 2 types of GDP with regard to the prices which we are taking into account. One is real GDP and second is nominal GDP. So let's suppose it was 2024 and this is 2025. In the economy, 20 chocolates were produced in 2024 and the price of each chocolate was 10 rupees. And let's suppose only chocolates are being produced in that economy. So here we can say the GDP will be 200. Okay. And in 2025, let's suppose again 20 chocolates were produced, but the prices of all the chocolates increased to 20 rupees. Why? Because there is increase in the cost of raw materials, there is increase in the labor cost, or the capital became costlier, etc. Because of which the prices of chocolates increased to 20 rupees. Now what will happen when we will calculate this at current prices? Then we will get the nominal GDP, that is 20 into 20 equal to 400. But when we calculate the real GDP, that is calculated at fixed prices, which is fixed by a base year itself. Now here the real GDP will again be 20 into 10. Let's suppose 24 was the base year, where we have taken the price of that particular 24 as the base year, that was 10 rupees per chocolate. So real GDP for that year will be 200, whereas the nominal GDP for 2025 will be 400. So that is one of the reasons why we keep a base year, also to get a comparison over the previous year, that what is the growth that is happening with regard to the size of the GDP. And whenever we say that GDP is growing, we generally say that we generally talk about the real GDP. Also the GDP which was calculated earlier before 2015, it was at the factor cost, and then at present time it is calculated at market prices, which includes the taxes, etc. Now factor cost means whatever the cost that we need to pay on these 4 factors of production, whereas these when we talk about market prices, it also incorporates the impact of taxes. And manufacturing data that we were getting earlier, that was from industrial production index and annual survey of industries which were being done. Now this annual survey that was being done, they were not giving a true picture because of the limitation with regard to the surveys that we can get. So again, it was not covering informal sector comprehensively, plus it was not giving a true picture of the economy. And after 2015, we shifted to this MCA 121 database, Ministry of Corporate Affairs 21 database, where every company needs to mandatorily submit their data with regard to the production, etc., that they are doing with regard to the revenue, and based on which we were calculating the GDP. Also, as of now, this gross value added is at basic prices. That means that taxes and subsidies are further included. So we have the GDP at market price, where we incorporate GVA at factor cost plus GVA at basic price plus product taxes minus product subsidies, and then we also have the GVA at basic price, where we calculate GVA at factor cost, all the factor costs that we are seeing here, plus production taxes and minus production subsidies. So GVA basic price we are calculating, where we are calculating first GVA at factor cost plus production taxes minus production subsidy. Then when we are calculating GDP at market price, then we are incorporating GVA at basic prices plus product taxes minus product subsidies. So it is giving a more comprehensive picture. Plus the only farm produce were being incorporated when we were taking agriculture sector, but now the post 2015 we were including livestock data and other agricultural activities. Now here again another concern which is being highlighted by the IMF is here itself, that our base year is outdated. It is 2011-12 still, that this base year is outdated, and that is the reason we are not getting a true picture of the economy. Also, there are various other issues, for example, lack of coverage of the informal sector. Then again, to calculate the real GDP and the nominal GDP, the indices that are used, they are majorly the WPI wholesale price index and the CPI. But globally, the more prudent norm is PPI, that is producer price index. Let's also try to understand that what are the different type of inflation indices. So CPI, that is consumer price index, that tracks the change in retail price of goods and services. And these are the goods that we household purchase for our daily consumption. For example, the chocolates that we are buying, or the toothpaste, toothbrush, etc., whatever we are buying. And earlier base year for this was 2012, but now it is being revised. Also, it is again released by NSO of under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Then we have the wholesale price index, which is released by Office of Economic Advisor under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. That represents the prices of goods at wholesale stage, that is goods that are sold in bulk and they are traded between organization instead of consumers. Here again, if you see, the base year is 2011-12, and if you talk about all the commodities which are covered in WPI, primary articles weight is 22.62%, manufactured products have a huge weightage of 64.23%, and fuel and power are having the weightage of 13.15%. And then we have the producer price index, that is PPI, which measures the wholesale price from the point of view of the producer of goods and services, and that tracks prices at different stage of production. For example, whatever the change that is happening with regard to the raw material cost, what is the changes that is happening with regard to the logistical cost, what is the change that is happening with regard to the wages, etc. If we will give this idea we can get with the help of producer price index, that what is the change that is happening at production stage itself. So this PPI looks at inflation from the viewpoint of industry and businesses and measures the price changes that is happening before the consumer purchases the final goods and services. So globally, PPI is generally kept into account to get an idea about the nominal and real GDP, especially the real GDP, where we adjust the inflation, because in the real GDP inflation is adjusted, whereas in nominal GDP inflation is unadjusted. So we continue use of this wholesale price index instead of this producer price index that distorts the real GDP estimates. Also, this the GDP rebasing, which is overdue, it was last updated 2015. Also, the lack of timely consolidated fiscal data, the data that is coming with lag, there is no coherence between the center and the state with regard to the data that is coming. Plus the population census that is overdue. It was we needed data of 2021 census, but again it is announced now. A few months back it was announced, but that data is also overdue. So that is also not giving a true picture about the population. So the per capita GDP, per capita income, etc., that data also we are not getting properly. And there are other historical issues which we have just discussed with regard to the large revision and inconsistencies between the GDP by activity and GDP by expenditure, which we just discussed, the distorted data between the output approach or value added method and the expenditure approach. Along with that, the IIP, which is giving an idea about the industrial status, that what is the status of the industrial growth. So here again, the manufacturing is having 77.63% weight, mining is having 14.3% weight, and electricity is having 7.99% weight. Again, the base year for this is outdated, which government has announced to change. And these are some of the reforms which government is going to do with the help of which we will be probably getting much better data. For example, the new GDP series, for which the base year has changed to 2022-23, it will be changed to 2022-23, and it will be launched around February 2026. That will include the new methodology as well as new data sources. For example, GSTN network will be used to get the data that will give a true picture of the consumption expenditure that will be done. Along with that, they will also try to get the data from the different limited liability companies, LLP, etc., as well as various other establishments, so that they can cover the informal sector along with the other corporations like LLP in a more comprehensive manner to get a true picture. And the first quarterly data will cover around October to December quarter of 2025. Also, the consumer price index CPI series, that is also the base year for which is going to be revised for 2024, and it will again be releasing around February 2026. Plus, the most importantly, it will be based on household consumption expenditure survey of 2023-24. Whatever the basket of the goods that are kept under the CPI, right, that is again outdated. The people's choices have shifted. They are now shifting to some new products. So we can't give a true picture of CPI based on the old basket, and that is the reason it is going to rely on household consumption expenditure. That will give an idea what exactly people are consuming, based on which we will give an data about the inflation. Also, other updates, for example, IIP, that is Index of Industrial Production, again base year for that will be 2020-23. Along with that, another thing that we need to understand, that here, for example, the PPI which the IMF is saying that we should shift, that will also comprehensively cover services part, which is not as of now being covered because of the WPI related adjustments that we are doing. Also, as of now, the RBI is giving the balance of payment data, current account balance, etc., at quarterly basis, but again they are preparing to give this data monthly basis to again give a true picture. And our chief economic advisor said last year that there is need for deregulation, better hiring policies, more state capacity that is needed for higher growth. So there is need for deregulation of the sectors. Along with that, there is need for further identifying the issues which are there with regard to the policies which are coming, with regard to the methodology that we are taking into account. Because when we'll get a proper data, and if the global confidence will increase, or even the Indian commentators which are related to economy, when their confidence will increase that data, the reliability of that data will further increase. For example, recently it was said 8.2% GDP growth rate. There are some people who find it little difficult to believe that this much of growth rate can be possible at present rate. So if we are targeting our $5 trillion economy, which we need to achieve by 27-28, which is the current target, or the vision of Viksit Bharat or developed India, which we are going to achieve by 2047. So we need better data, better methodology. Along with that, the other issues which are there in the economy, like the issue of regulation, over-regulation of some sectors, overlapping of jurisdiction between center and states, issues with regard to the compliance, with regard to the hiring policies, etc., that needs to be addressed. For example, government came with GST 2.0, that is again leading to a more rationalized regulation. It will improve the compliance. They already announced the labor codes that will again improve the hiring policies. They are again coming with some other specific schemes like employment linked incentive scheme that will again provide incentives to employer as well as employee, that will further improve the hiring policies. So if all these programs and the policies which are coming by the government, which are coming from the government, if there will be a proper oversight mechanism, we can ensure that we are getting best from these changes that are happening. Plus, that can also help us in getting the that will help us in achieving the targets that we have already made. This is a question that was asked in 2020 prelims examination. Please answer this question in the comment box. This is related to different indices that are used by India as well as the Reserve Bank of India, and this is a mains practice question that you people can write from this topic. Moving towards our next topic, that is AIDS and TB fight, Tamil Nadu shows the way again. The context of this topic is that a write-up has appeared in today's the Hindu newspaper in the form of one of the editorial, and that is focusing on the major challenges associated with the rising burden of the TB and AIDS in India, and how exactly with the innovative methods Tamil Nadu is showing the way to other states and to India also. And this particular topic is related to your GS paper 2 health. Let's first try to look into some of the basics of tuberculosis and AIDS. So tuberculosis, which is a bacterial disease caused by the bacteria Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and the transmission of this bacteria happens with the airborne infection that is mainly spreads with the close contact with the infected person. If the person is coughing, sneezing, etc., this airborne infection can happen. Also, that it is completely curable disease. The treatment is possible, and 6-month course is there for antimicrobial drugs. One of the course is DOTS, etc., which is a 6-month course, and if people will complete this antibacterial drug course, this particular tuberculosis can be eliminated. Majorly it impacts the lungs of the person, but it can also impact other organs of the person. Also, with regard to the India TB report that came, estimated TB case in 2020 were around 26.9 lakh. In 2023 it increased to 27.4 lakh, and it further increased to 27.8 lakh in 2024. And if you see the estimated mortality, 3.2 lakh was the mortality that was with regard to the tuberculosis, that was because of the tuberculosis. And again, one of the major issue is that around 25% of the global TB infections are happening in India itself. And that is one of the reasons that we need to have a proper policy, sound policy, to ensure that we are able to tackle this burden. Then AIDS, that is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. So majorly this HIV, which stands for the human immunodeficiency virus, after entering the body, they gradually destroys the immune system, for example CD4 cells, etc., and that reduces the ability to fight infections or the diseases of the person. And this can evolve into AIDS that leads to the weakening of immune system, and then it is not curable at all. What are the modes of transmission? Unprotected sex with an HIV infected person, transfusion of HIV infected blood or blood products, sharing of needles which are contaminated with HIV infected blood, or from HIV infected mother to her baby during pregnancy, breastfeeding, etc. So with the bodily fluids, this HIV can be transferred. Now, this human immunodeficiency virus is a virus that can lead to AIDS, and it both these gradually attacks and weakens the system. And this AIDS is the later stage of untreated HIV. For example, antiretroviral therapy is there, which is a group of drugs which are generally given to the HIV patients. So the impact can be reduced, however, it is not 100% curable. Also, the group of signs and symptoms that emerged as the immune system weakens, for example, people generally gets infected with other kind of diseases because their immune system has become very weak. Now let's try to understand what are the major challenges with tackling TB in India and then with AIDS in India. First of all, the high burden, huge amount of patients that are in India, and with the limited number of health centers in India, for example, primary health care centers, and what is the community health care centers number with regard to the recommended health centers. For example, primary health care facilities, it is around 27,661, whereas this is the recommended number, and the current primary health center are 23,236. But moreover, the availability of the doctors, a proper mechanism to track all the patients who are taking the DOTS or who are taking the medicines of the TB, that is not readily available. Then with regard to the community health care centers, the recommended numbers are 6,692, but again current number is around 3,346. And if you see that India has around 27%, 25 to 27% of burden, and total number of people who in the world who are suffering from tuberculosis is 1 crore. In India itself, it is around 26.9 lakh. And it is also one of the important diseases because of which the mortality or the deaths of the people are happening. Plus drug resistance, that is multi-drug resistant TB, that if a person who needs to complete his 6 month of course, for example, rifampicin is there, isoniazid is there, which are the antibiotic drugs which are used to treat the tuberculosis. But if the person is not aware that they need to complete the 6 month of course and they leave the course in midway itself, there are chances that that tuberculosis bacteria will become resistant to antibiotic drugs. Also, limited access to healthcare because of the poor doctor-patient ratio, because of the poor availability of the primary healthcare center and community healthcare centers, because of the high cost that is involved in the private sector, because of the high out-of-pocket expenditure, because of high poverty. For example, Multidimensional Poverty Index 2024 says that multidimensional poverty headcount ratio is around 11.28%. Also, the stigma and the discrimination, that if a person is already having the TB, they have a feeling that if they will share this in the public domain, people will start ignoring me, or people will not interdine with me, people will not handshake with me, people will not spend time with me. And despite knowing that they are infected with TB, they continue with that, and whenever they cough, sneeze, etc., the infection further infects other persons in that vicinity. Also, poor living conditions, for example, with the rural and urban migration that we are witnessing, because of the better facilities in the form of better employment opportunities, educational facilities, health facilities that are available in the urban areas, we are witnessing the flux of migrants. But again, there is a limited amount of infrastructure that is available which can sustain population properly in the urban cities. So whatever the urban sprawl that we are witnessing, that is compromising the living conditions. For example, even the basic necessities are not getting fulfilled in the form of potable water, in the form of better sanitation facilities. People are living in slums. For example, this is the data with regard to the number of slums which are there in major cities, for example, Delhi, Meerut and Mumbai, etc. And also we need to understand that these people are construction workers, for example, daily wage workers, etc. And whenever a particular disease happens, their work will also be compromised. So because of these poor living conditions, the chances of thriving of this TB bacteria becomes much higher. Also, the limited awareness with regard to the TB disease, the importance of completing course. For example, whenever person starts taking antibiotic drugs, the symptoms subsidizes. People start, the coughing, etc. reduces, and people just think, they presume that they are already 100% cured. And that is the reason this multi-drug resistant TB, etc. is becoming prevalent in Indian society. Also, the challenges with regard to the AIDS in India. For example, the late diagnosis and low testing coverage. And that shows the hidden burden. For example, whenever a person is having unprotected sex, as a normal human being, the people should know, or people generally knows, that unprotected sex can lead to the AIDS or HIV. But even after that, they do not go for regular checkups. Or even if a person is, let's suppose, is a drug addict, and they know that they are using syringes, etc., even knowing that, they don't go for the regular checkups. So because of which there is a high burden that we are witnessing. For example, around 30% of people who are living with HIV in India, they do not know their status, as per a survey which is done by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Also, the social stigma and discrimination associated with this. Although there are various awareness campaigns that are run by the government, that by interdining or by shaking hands with the person who is infected by the AIDS, HIV will not spread at all. But despite that, there is a stigma associated with the disease, discrimination associated with that. And because of these socio-cultural barriers, there are fear of isolation and social rejections, because of which people avoid sharing this information that they are infected by HIV, and there may be a case that may further infect other persons. Also, gaps in treatment coverage and drug resistant. For example, antiretroviral therapy or antibody treatment which is available for HIV, that is not available in the major hospitals of India. For example, the vaccines are not available for HIV, but again antibody treatment is given, but that is costly. That is not available in the majority of the semi-urban and rural areas. And around 1.4 million people are on antiretroviral therapy, but because of the high cost that is involved, because of the poor availability in the public hospitals, a high dropout rate is witnessed, and that HIV will further turn into AIDS, and which can be life-threatening. Also, high vulnerability of the key population gap, that there are some concentrated epidemic. For example, you'll see the districts in Punjab, in northeastern states, where the drug abuse is very high, drug use is very high. Those are the areas or the cities where the HIV prevalence is also very high. Also, if you see this India TB report and World TB Day 2025, if you see the TB HIV co-infection, that 54,000 new TB cases each year among the people who are living with HIV. Why? Because whenever the HIV is there, it will reduce the immune response of the person. The capability to fight with the TB infection will reduce, and that will make this person more susceptible to get infected with the tuberculosis. 11,000 TB related deaths are happening annually in the HIV positive individuals. That with the reduction in the immune response and immunity of the person because of the HIV infection, the chances of getting TB is much high, and that is also causing death of the person. Also, funding constraints and programmatic gaps that are there. For example, resource limitations is there with regard to the various therapies that are available, awareness campaigns that are available. The limited budgets are available with the state healthcare departments or the hospitals, etc. For example, states has time again and again reported that they are stock out of the testing kits and antiretroviral medicines that are given, group of medicines that are given to HIV infected persons. When there will be a poor supply of these medicines, for example, COVID portal was being used for tracking the supply of the vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines. If similar kind of portal can be developed which can track the testing kits, the availability of the testing kits, availability of antiretroviral medicines or other important medicines which are important for human health, then we can ensure that we will be able to provide them at a timely manner, and that can ensure that mortality is very less. What are the government initiatives to tackle this burden of tuberculosis and AIDS? For example, Pradhan Mantri TB Bharat Abhiyan, which is providing nutritional support. It is also providing better access to diagnostic and treatment of the person. Also, there are government approved BAPLM regimen, and it is your duty to pronounce these 4 medicines which are given together to treat the tuberculosis. One is bedaquiline, then we have the pretomanid, then we have the lenozolide and moxifloxacin. Okay. Also, there is National Strategic Plan that is ensuring quality diagnostics, treatment and support to every TB patients. For example, target for India is to eliminate tuberculosis by 2025, whereas global target is 2030. Also, the free of cost diagnostics and treatment which is being provided with the help of anti-TB drugs to all the TB patients, and this RNTCP, that is Revised National Tuberculosis Control Program. Then also the Nikshay Poshan Yojana, which is again under this National Strategic Plan, that provides incentives in the form of 500 rupees per month for each notified TB patient, so that these people can complete their duration of anti-TB treatment, and also the incentives are distributed in cash as well as direct benefit transfers are given, so that their nutritional needs can be fulfilled based on that direct cash transfer. Also, for example, this for AIDS, there is this NACPV, that is the National AIDS and STD Control Program. So here what is happening, the targeted areas are there where government is focusing on the operational target, which includes aiming 95 coverage, that is 95% of people who are at risk use prevention, 95% of HIV positive know their status that they are infected by HIV, 95% of those who are on treatment, and 95% of those achieve viral suppression. And also for pregnant and breastfeeding women living with HIV, ensuring suppressed viral to enable elimination of vertical transmissions that generally happen from pregnant to the newborn child. Also, the target is to reduce the annual new HIV infection by 80% from 2010 baseline. Also, reduce the AIDS related mortalities by 80% from 2010 baseline. Also, to eliminate the vertical transmission which we have discussed from mother to child, which generally happens at fetus. And then also to promote universal access to quality antiretroviral therapy and testing kits, etc. to the vulnerable population. We also need to eliminate the stigma associated with that, discrimination associated with that. There were various campaigns, etc. that is being generally done by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, as well as various state related interventions are also there. For example, Tamil Nadu's model, that is Tamil Nadu State AIDS Control Society, which took various interventions which has yielded better results. If you see the how exactly Tamil Nadu started the AIDS program, so from 1992, National AIDS Control Project was launched with the support from World Bank, but the major issue was the fund flow from the World Bank was very slow, that has reduced the effectiveness of this program. In 1994, Tamil Nadu converts the state AIDS cell into Tamil Nadu State AIDS Control Society, which is one of the registered society, which has enabled direct funding, and also it provided various autonomy with regard to the various decisions and various initiatives that they can take. Also, the impact was that there was various rapid awareness campaigns which were launched. For example, there are various state level online quiz competitions which are generally done by this society itself, that further increases the awareness of the people, and because of which because of this kind of interventions, there was sharp fall in new infections, and Tamil Nadu no longer is one of the HIV hotspot. From 1997 to 2002, model was replicated nationwide, and because of which India's HIV prevalence declines from 0.5% in 2000 to 0.22% now. So what is path ahead? What should be done to control this dual burden as well as to control the burden of HIV as well as tuberculosis? First of all, we need to engage better with the private hospitals and the chemists. We need to provide them with testing kits properly. Plus, we need to give them proper training at regular interval to ensure that they are getting an idea about the antiretroviral therapy that is available. Along with that, some of the better hospitals can be equipped with antibodies treatments that are available for the HIV. Also, there should be a proper tracking mechanism oversight for the patients who are on these therapies or who are on the antibiotic drugs for the tuberculosis. Also, we can leverage the contact with the rural medical practitioners, because in COVID-19 itself, during COVID-19 itself, you see people who are coming from the rural background would relate with the fact that azithromycin, Dolo 650, Calpol 500, etc. were the medicines which were being recommended by these medical practitioners, these chemists which are there in our local markets. There is lack of availability of the qualified doctors, plus hospitals were already flooded and there was a risk of infection from hospital also. That was the reason people started taking medicines from these rural medical practitioners as well as chemists which are available. So if they will have the complete information about what are the symptoms related to tuberculosis, symptoms related to HIV, they can give the correct information that where they should go for the testing, where they should go for the treatment. Then again we can reduce the prevalence of this tuberculosis and AIDS. Also, there is need for effective implementation of ongoing programs. We need to do a proper audit. We need to see that what are the issues, and we need to plug those gaps which are there in the ongoing programs. Also, there is need for investment in research and development. For example, there are various research going on with regard to the antibodies treatment for the HIVs. But again, with the new researches that are happening, it is giving an idea that with regard to different strains that are there in different regions of the world, that response to antibody is again different. For example, recently M21 matrix vaccine is there, which is being manufactured by Serum Institute of India for malaria. So India should focus on research and development. India's spending is only around 0.6 to 7%, and majority of which is again coming from the government itself. So if we'll focus on research and development, we can come with some of the novel solutions for the this kind of tuberculosis and AIDS as well as HIVs. Also, there is need for awareness generation. We need to dismantle the stereotyping associated with these diseases. Prevention is important. Taking due diligence while dealing with those patients is important. But again, stereotyping should not be there. Discrimination should not be there. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. So the next topic is Centre's citizenship scrutiny power is limited, is said by Election Commission of India, and this is related to your GS paper 2, Executive, Indian Constitution and Fundamental Rights, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 13. So the Election Commission of India dismissed the arguments which are raised by the opposition and various other people with regard to the special intensive revision, and the main aim of this special intensive revision is to go for identification of inclusion and exclusion error in the electoral roll and to rectify that. Now they said that only the union government has the exclusive authority to scrutinize the citizenship, and they said that center power was also limited to inquiring into the circumstances in which the Indian citizenship voluntarily acquired foreign citizenship under the Citizenship Act of 1955. Also, what we need to understand that census is one of the subjects which is under union list. That also shows that it is the complete domain of the center government itself. Also, Commission referred to Section 9 of the Citizenship Act 1955, which deals with the termination of citizenship in case voluntary acquisition of foreign citizenship happened. So that shows that it is not the power of Election Commission of India, rather whatever the powers that they are having under Article 3 to 4 of the Constitution, that is direction, that is to ensure that they have a full control, supervision of the elections. That is the main domain on which they are working. Also, this section 9 vests in the center to authority to determine when or how an Indian citizenship acquired foreign citizenship. The power of the central government are confined to reviewing the acquisition of foreign citizenship and whether based on such acquisition the Indian citizenship of person should be terminated, whether the person acquired Indian citizenship by fraud or whether with the person acquired any citizenship of any foreign country, so that particular person cannot hold dual citizenship as per Indian Constitution, as per Indian law. So in that case, then center can revoke that. Also, it is only for this limited purpose that exclusive jurisdiction has been vested in center to the exclusion of all other authorities. Every other aspect related to citizenship can be inquired into by other authorities. Also, we need to understand that Commission reiterated that its power to scrutinize citizenship flowed directly from Article 324, which empowered to it supervise, control and conduct the election and also go for preparation of electoral roll. And that is the universal adult franchise, which is again provided under Article 326, that no parliament law should oust the Election Commission's jurisdiction. It said, noting that even the authority of the parliament to make laws on election under Article 327 must align with the Commission's plenary power. Also, the Representation of People Act 1950 through Section 16 and 19 requires that voter must be Indian citizens. That is one of the reason again why the citizenship is being ensured under this SIR, which is being oversought by the Election Commission of India. Section 16 disqualifies non-citizen from being included in electoral roll, and electors must be ordinarily resident in a constituency to be registered in the electoral roll and to cast their votes in the election. Also, this SIR conducted under Section 21 subclause 3 of Representation of People's Act, which had to be intense and was triggered by felt necessities, and this was said by the Election Commission of India. Also, they said that the guidelines which has been issued with regard to the SIR are constitutional and they are in interest of maintaining the purity of the electoral rolls. That whatever the persons whose name are in electoral rolls, they are the citizens. There is no inclusion and exclusion error that is being witnessed. Also, that this is one of the important prerequisites, that sanctity of the electoral roll needs to be maintained to go for free and fair elections. Also, they denied that it is unconstitutional, and they also shifted the burden of the verification on electors who must fill up enumeration form to avoid exclusion from electoral rolls. Commission also said that the voter friendly and cooperative exercise is this SIR. These electoral rolls only required to fill and sign their pre-filled forms that are delivered by the booth level officers, that is BLO, at their homes itself. Also, another related process that we need to understand is the exercise of NPR, or National Population Registered, which gives us an idea about the usual residents of the country, and it doesn't give an idea who are citizen and non-citizen. It is mandatory for every usual resident of India to registered in the NPR, and also it is drawing its power from the Citizenship, Registration of Citizens and Issue of National Identity Cards rules of 2003. Any usual resident is a person who has resided in a local area for past 6 months or more, or a person who intends to reside in that area for next 6 months or more. That means that they include both Indian citizens as well as foreign citizens. The objective is to create a comprehensive identity database of every usual resident in the country. The first NPR was conducted in 2010. Updation for that happened in 2015 by conducting door-to-door survey, and next NPR will happen along with the census 2021. This is again done by the Office of Registrars General of India. Next topic is how Pakistan's judiciary is being undermined. This is related to your GS paper 2, effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interest, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 10. So this 27th amendment of constitution led to various changes. For example, it created a new supreme defense level post, that is chief of defense forces, and the current army chief is going to become the chief of defense forces. That will give him the constitutional command over army, navy as well as air force. That will replace the earlier case of the chairman joint chiefs of staff committee, which is now abolished. Also, there will be a lifetime rank, privileges and immunity for top level officers who are 5-star or field marshal or field admiral or air force marshal. They will retain their rank, uniform and privileges for their whole life, and also they will enjoy immunity from any kind of arrest or any criminal or civil proceedings from the courts. Also, there is this new constitutional court which is being created. The name of that will be Federal Constitutional Court of Pakistan, that will handle exclusively the constitutional matters and interprovincial, federal provincial related matters. For example, in India, the original jurisdiction of Supreme Court, that whatever the matter is there between center and state or between the state, that is the original jurisdiction of Supreme Court itself. Similarly, the Federal Constitutional Court of Pakistan will look up to the issue of the constitutional matters or issues with regard to the federal provinces. Also, they will reduce the jurisdiction of Supreme Court of Pakistan in those matters, and it will have the equal representation from all provinces, and there will be a separate chief justice whose term will be 3, and majorly he will be appointed by the executive itself. So that shows that executive will be having greater control over the judiciary of the Pakistan. Also, the powers of the judicial appointment and transfers, that is again under the executive control. Executive is going to take more control. That this amendment will expand the executive and political input in the appointment and the transfer of judges. Judges can now be transferred between high courts on the recommendation of judicial oversight body even without the consent of the judge itself. And this refusal of the judge to get transferred to the new post can lead to forced retirement also. That is being said by the critics that it is undermining the judicial independence. Also, the broader immunity that is being extended to the military officers even after their term will also be limiting the accountability of these persons. Also, if you see that why exactly they have what after these amendments, what are the changes that has happened. For example, what are the events that has happened? 3 judges from the Supreme Court and High Court have already resigned from the protest. 4 judges from the Islamabad High Court have appealed against it. And what are the implications of it? First of all, with the creation of this, Supreme Court of the Pakistan will not have the original jurisdiction. Plus, this particular issue, earlier what was happening, that there were various cases, various investigation etc. that were being done by the Supreme Court of Pakistan with regard to the executive. For example, role of earlier PM of Pakistan when his name appeared in Panama Papers, or with regard to another Memogate scandal which was there, where there were Pakistan's ambassador who asked US to support the civilian government in 2011, that was led by the Pakistan People's Party. So time and again it was felt in Pakistan that there is a judicial overreach which is being done by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and that is one of the reasoning which is given that they came with this new Federal Constitutional Court of Pakistan. Also, it provides the executive with more power to transfer judges without their consent, and the critics are saying that it will enable the more control of the executive with regard to the judges transfer, and this will mainly happen with the judges who will not toe the line of the executive. Also, it could transfer the judges to secure its choice or to penalize those who disagree with it. Also, in effect, the relationship between FCC and Supreme Court will have on the judiciary. That while the section of judges and lawyers are against the amendment and the FCC, another section has accepted it. Plus, the appointments in the federal court has already been done. Also, what we need to understand that earlier also there was this 18th amendment that was done that provided for a judicial commission of Pakistan to recommend the name of new judges, thereby giving more space to the judiciary. And 27th amendment is making this redundant. Also, government is trying to undermine the rule of law. Why exactly they are trying to undermine the rule of law? Because separation of power and independent judiciary are the essential for any constitutional democracy. And this is the reasoning which is being given by the government, and that is the reason they want to ensure that separation of power is strictly maintained. Also, one of the reason which was given that it will reduce the case load of higher judiciary. But still, if you see that out of 2.26 million cases which are pending, 82% are in district court and less than 3% in less than 3% were there in the Supreme Court. So that again doesn't show that there is a high pendency of case in Supreme Court. And the real motivation is the Pakistan Muslim League, PML, and government are to clip the wing of the Supreme Court and reduce it to Court of Appeals by removing its original jurisdiction. And it all started after 26th Amendment, which was passed by the PML and government in 2025, and it altered the composition of JCP, which was recommending the names of the judges. And also in 2010, the 18th Amendment mandated the appointment from JCP itself. And it altered the composition by bringing more member from the executive, giving more control of the executive in the appointment process of the judges. Also, 26th Amendment Act granted the power to appoint constitutional benches, thereby removing the Chief Justice of Pakistan power to appoint the benches. For example, in India, the Chief Justice is the master of roster. He will be deciding that which particular case will go to which bench, which is not the case after this amendment in Pakistan. Also, during first 4 decades, the judiciary took a pill to defend the unconstitutional actions by the military dictators such as Ayub Khan, Yahya Khan, or Ziaul Haq. But the Supreme Court invoked the doctrine of necessity to look other ways as military rulers tore up the constitutional. And also, Zia, who is the former military dictator, he said that constitution was a piece of paper. In 1990s, judiciary was brought into the center of power struggle between the president and prime minister. When the president dismissed the PM, which is backed by the establishment, the Supreme Court had to intervene by either justifying the dismissal, which happened with Benazir Bhutto, or by restoring the government, which happened with the Nawaz Sharif government in 1993. That shows that increased involvement of judiciary in the executive in the government. Also, they confronted first time in 1996 when Nawaz Sharif tried to remove the Chief Justice, and that led to party members of Nawaz Sharif storming the Supreme Court, and that further started to deteriorate the relationship. And now, what is the after his name of the Nawaz Sharif came in Panama Papers, then again Supreme Court disqualified him from contesting election. That further was considered by some as a judicial overreach. And till then, there were various other allegations which were there from the judges that there were involvement of intelligence officers for intimidation, etc. Now, what exactly will be the next? First of all, they have already started functioning this FCC with the appointment coming in this, and the judiciary further stands divided, where there are some persons who have resigned, there are some who are criticizing that, but there is a section which is supporting that, and some of them Supreme Court judges have again agreed to serve on the new FCC. And with this political and societal issues that are facing Pakistan, now the question of accountability, especially in the higher institution, as the recent International Monetary Fund report also highlighted, an independent judiciary is essential for the Pakistan. And again, it will be good to see that how exactly they are fulfilling these criteria which are being set by the IMF, based on which they will be getting the funds from the IMF also. And there are also some other changes. For example, return of education and population planning, that has returned to federal government. It is now part of the jurisdiction of federal government. Also, changes were done in the appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner, that it seeks to alter how the CEC is appointed, potentially giving ruling party greater influence and reducing opposition input in the process of the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner. For example, in India, as of now, the Prime Minister of India plus a cabinet minister recommended by the Prime Minister, plus along with that, the leader of opposition recommends the name of the CEC or the EC, and that person is now appointed by the president as EC. And what we need to understand, that similar was the earlier fashion, but now similar was the earlier case with the Pakistan, but now that has changed in Pakistan after this 27th amendment. Next topic is centered to bring new levies on tobacco, pan masala as GST cess set to lapse. This is related to your GS paper 3, mobilization of resources, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express, page number 50. Now what exactly is the case, that when this GST came, that under that also goods and services compensation to state X 2017 came, and under that states were guaranteed compensation at the compound rate of 14% from the base year of 2015-16. Because of the implementation of the GST, whatever the revenue losses that states were having, they, for making up to those losses, they were promised that they will be getting compensation for 5 years since the rollout of GST. After the 5-year compensation period ended in June 2022, the government has notified the extension of levy and collection of compensation till March 2026 for the repayment of loan that was meant to compensate states. What happened that after COVID-19, the revenues of the central government took a hit. The revenues under GST also took a hit, because of which central government was finding it difficult to compensate the states, for which the central government took certain loans, and to repay those loans, this was extended till March 2026. And this compensation cess on tobacco and related products and pan masala continued to operate under the current system of 28% GST along with additional cess, even as hundreds of goods and services saw GST rate changes from September 22 this year under GST 2.0. That the RISIG has ensured that major commodities which were kept under 28% that were brought to the lower slabs, but again the tobacco, pan masala continued to be 28% along with the cess. And now government is going to introduce 2 legislative bills to bring higher excise levy on the tobacco and related products, and the name of that cess will be health security, say national security cess, and that will be levied on pan masala, as the compensation cess that is levied under the GST is going to end by March 2026. Also, this will be carried through the Central Excise Amendment Bill 2025 and Health Security say National Security Cess Bill 2025. And this will be hiked on tobacco and related products by Centre through an amendment to the Central Excise Act of 1944 to maintain the tax incident after the end of GST compensation cess, while the new Health Security say National Security Cess is going to be levied on pan masala or any other goods that the government may notify to augment the resources for meeting expenditure on national security and for public health. And also it will be used to fund the expenses of national security. Also, what exactly we need to understand the difference between cess and surcharge. So Constitution 270, Constitution's Article 270, Article 270 and 271 mainly mentions cess and surcharge. So the proceeds from surcharge goes directly to the Consolidated Fund of India. As of now, surcharge is generally levied on the high income people, and the proceeds that is coming from the surcharge, they can be used for any purpose. And they does not part the component under the divisible pool, that there is no sharing with the states that is necessary, and which are with regard to the funds that are coming under the surcharge. With regard to the cess, again, whenever a cess is levied, for example, as of now you have the health and education cess 4%. So whatever the funds that are coming under the cess, that also goes to the Consolidated Fund of India, but that will be utilized for that purpose only. 4% for the health and education, so that will be utilized for that purpose only. And generally there is no sharing that happens with the states. But for example, GST compensation cess, the name was cess itself, but that was a specific kind of cess to compensate the states for their revenue losses, and that was the reason that was being given to the state itself. Also, generally cess is levied by the central government, but it can be also levied by some of the states, but that is again the exceptions. For example, Tamil Nadu recently revoked 1% market cess that is levied on the maize itself. Also, for example, if the people who are earning more than 50 lakh rupees, so whatever the taxable income is there is a surcharge that is applicable on that, and whatever the taxable income comes, there is a 4% health and education cess that will be levied on that taxable income. Next topic is Cyclone Ditwah How exactly the tropical cyclones are named? This is related to your GS paper 1, important geophysical phenomena, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 16. So the cyclone Ditwah, which was located around 90 kilometers southeast in Tamil Nadu, is expected to weaken into deep depression soon, and this was said by Regional Meteorological Center. Cyclones that form in every ocean basin across the world are named by the regional specialized meteorological centers and the tropical cyclones warning centers that also include IMD. What exactly is a tropical cyclone? It is a large-scale low-pressure system that is not associated with any kind of front, and they generally originate over tropical or subtropical waters, and they has organized showers, thunderstorms, and also a closed surface wind circulation around a well-defined center. Also, we need to understand there are certain conditions that are required for formation and intensification of tropical cyclones. For example, it requires warm sea surface temperature around 27 degrees Celsius. It also requires pre-existing weak low pressure area, low vertical wind shear, Coriolis force that helps in creating that cyclonic spin. And this naming also happens, and in 2000 naming of the cyclones happens for ease, for identification, and also for creating awareness. In 2000, a group of nations called as WMO ESCAP, that is World Meteorological Organization, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, that comprised Bangladesh, India, Maldives, Myanmar, Oman, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, they decided to name cyclone in the region. And after each country sent suggestions, the panel finalized the list, and now more countries were later added to the grouping. And this Ditwah was submitted by Yemen. Now, what are the conditions that are used to name the cyclones? First of all, they must be gender, politic, regional, and cultural neutral. And tropical cyclone hurricanes are named neither after any particular person nor with any preference in alphabetical sequence. They have to be short and easy to pronounce. The name should not hurt sentiments or be offensive in any way. And these are presumed to be far easier to remember than the numbers and technical terms. Naming cyclones help in quick identification of storms in the warning messages that are given on radio devices, etc. It also makes it easier for scientific community and disaster managers to create awareness and disseminate warning to much wider audience. For example, you see that there are different names which are submitted by different countries. The current name is Ditwah, which was given by the Yemen itself. India also gave various other names time and again which are implemented. Next topic is VPN services banned for 2 months in 2 Jammu districts, and this is related to your GS paper 3 cyber security, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 12. So the authorities have suspended all virtual private network services in Poonch and Rajouri districts of Jammu division for next 2 months, and in 2 separate orders the administration of 2 districts which are close to line of control declared the suspension of VPNs. And what exactly is the main use of the VPN? First of all, we have seen an unprecedented high use of VPNs in the past few days at different locations of districts by the suspicious internet users, and also a similar order was issued by the Rajouri administration, and police have apprised that the district administration of how VPN transmit gets encrypted and creates a point-to-point tunnel that also masks IP address and sidesteps website blocks and firewalls, thus making sensitive data vulnerable to cyber attack. For example, here this is your IP address, your device is there like computer, laptop, etc., whatever you are using. Then there will be an adware, etc., that can come with the help of which an hacker can hack information. They can take some information from your this device. Now this internet service provider is there. Whatever the information you are accessing, that can be watched by government, that can be also spied or snooped by various people. But if you will be using some VPN, it will encrypt the data that will protect your online traffic from the spies, from the hackers, or from internet service providers, also from governments. Also, it will create a secure tunnel. With the help of this secure tunnel, all traffic will pass through a private secure connection. It will also mask your IP address. The correct IP address was this, but because of this VPN VPN server, new IP address is this. Also, this will bypass certain restrictions. For example, certain geo-blocked content or websites which are not permissible in one jurisdiction, because of the new IP address which will mask your real identity, real jurisdiction. You will be able to access that also. It will also ensure authentication and integration, that it will confirm the authorized access, and that might prevent the tampering. So there are certain positives also, but the people, for example, like let's suppose terrorist organization, etc., when they will be accessing certain information with the help of VPN, there may be issue with regard to having a proper surveillance on that. This is all from today's analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.